Hi, I'm Jacob Iglitzin, and I will be playing Mr. Feldzig in The Drowsy Chaperone.
And today was when I learned how to properly pronounce your last name.
Right? I mean, I think I'm pronouncing it right, Mr. Feldzig.
Well, like your last name.
Oh, my last name.
I've for almost a year been putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Have you been saying Iglitzin?
Yes.
Iglitzin. I mean, I honestly don't really know how it's supposed to be pronounced, but I just say Iglitzin. It just feels like that's the natural.
Like you would know, better than anybody.
The character of Mr. Feldzig, as I understand, and because of the nature of his name, is sort of a parody of Florence Ziegfeld, who was kind of like great theater impresario of the era of like the, I guess, 1900s and 1920s. And so in this show, in The Drowsy Chaperone, he is a Broadway producer and, impresario who is very intent on Janet not marrying, right? Because he doesn't want to lose her as the star of his follies, basically. Lose her if she marries and gives up a life of show business and a life on the stage, because then he'll lose his leading lady.
But what's also fun about Drowsy Chaperone is, yes, that's the character you're playing in the show, but Man in Chair also introduces us to the actor who is playing that character.
Oh, yes. And does he say anything about I have to go back to the script. But...
Yeah, so your character and the actor playing Kitty in quote-unquote real life are a couple.
I see.
Whose shtick was, they were sort of a George Burns, Gracie Allen
Got it.
combo, except that she really was an idiot. Which I cannot wait for you and Olivia, who's playing Kitty, to play off each other. Oh, I can't wait. Have you worked with Brief Cameo before, and in what capacity?
So I worked with Brief Cameo this past January when we did the staged reading of Masterclass by Terrence McNally. And I played Manny Weinstock, who is the accompanist in Masterclass, and who, when Maria Callas, she has some times where she interacts with him just one-on-one, but mostly Manny's role in the show is to play the different selections of the arias.
When we're picking shows for Brief Cameo, it's my unspoken rule. I don't know if it works for everybody else. My rule is, if I can't immediately cast 3/4 of the roles, I don't want to do it. So when we were figuring out, okay, who could we do? And I was like, oh, okay, who do we want to work with again? We were like, and unanimously, we were like, we want to work with Jacob again. You were just so wonderful to work with. You sort of embodied the Brief Cameo ethics of, okay, I'm here. It's a lot of work, but I'm going to jump in and do it, and maybe put in more work than anyone's expecting or even thinking you would even do. I mean, you could sell your book for Masterclass to other to other companies.
I have it here, actually. Wait, oh yeah, wait, hang on, I'll bring it. Wait, here we go. Here's Masterclass with all the notes.
Oh man.
Oh.
And again, because people that we know, we can say, here's our wackadoo schedule. And you're like, okay, cool. And, so we know you obviously as a brilliant musician. So I was just excited that you were like, an acting part? Yes, please sign me up.
Well, and I can just say the irony of it was when you wrote about Drowsy Chaperone and you were like, oh, we want to offer you like an acting performing role, I was like, oh, that's so much less stressful. Like, because for me, it's like, that's sort of what I've been doing You know what I mean? And that's like what I've been doing in college, and I have gone more in the kind of writing direction, but that kind of feels like going back to my sort of roots in some ways, and how we all basically, so many of us got interested in doing theater in the first place was performing. The playing piano was the thing that really stressed me out. So that's why I was like, sure, brief cameo again, but this time I don't have to like wait to be cut off by, Angela and be like, go again. And I was like, I had a wonderful time doing masterclass, but it definitely was more out of my comfort zone, which is why it was also, I think, such a great introduction to brief cameo, because it was like, how are you going to be challenged and how are you going to do something that you wouldn't normally do? But this came as a bit of a relief. I was like, oh, okay, this I can do.
I think I know the answer to this, but did you know Drowsy Chaperone before we brought it to you and asked you to be part of it?
I do know the Drowsy Chaperone, although I've never seen a production of it. I was familiar with the score of Drowsy Chaperone, and I think that they might have done it as a college show like the year before I got to Columbia, or maybe 2 years before, because one of my very good friends and someone who I then lived with during college and then actually after college, he had been man and chair in, I think, the Columbia production. So it's like had to have, and he was only a year above me. So definitely people were talking about it as being there, but mostly I think I always enjoyed it because I loved that it was this 1920s pastiche, and that it had all these various, that it took these various conventions of this, your sort of typical kind of, I feel like there's a little like Cole Porter-ish type stuff in there, but also kind of almost older stuff as well, Rogers and Hart, and these kind of shows of the 20s, which I just always enjoyed because I love that period, and I love that that era of kind of the early 20th century Broadway musical comedy. So I've always loved the show for that reason, I think.
Got it. And it's
that's like a fascinating thing about this show, because there's that show The Boyfriend, which I think is like, was that written in the 50s?
50s. It was Julie Andrews' first Broadway show.
Right. And it was and that is your sort of typical, let me write a show as if it was in the 1920s. Right? And it's like the French Riviera, and there's the dancing girls and all of the kind of classic stuff. But what the Drowsy Chaperone does so brilliantly, in my opinion, is that it really lets you have your cake and eat it too. Because you have the joy and the fun and the kind of silly nostalgia for these shows, yet it's mirrored through this brilliant framing device, I think, of having this kind of contemporary lens on it, never in such a way that is sort of mocking or sort of like in a like, oh, like, look, let's make fun of how silly these old shows were, because it's done with clearly such love. And the creators of it are clearly just, they adore these old shows in the way that we do. But they can have a point of view or a take on the material that I think it can sometimes be missing from something that is just straight, okay, I'm writing in this era, but I want to just set my show in the 1920s. So I don't know how they were able to do that, but they did it very successfully, I think. Part of my history with the Drowsy Chaperone is that whenever I would find myself in need of a prepared monologue, and this happened in college, when I was auditioning in college, and much more recently, I was just at a program at the Eugene O'Neill Center, which I bring up because that was my introduction to brief cameo, because it was through Jill, who was my instructor. And during my time at the O'Neill, like a day or two before, they were like, come in with just your prepared monologue. I was like, what am I gonna do? I don't have just a monologue. And of course, I always do the man in chair monologue of, it's where the cane falls. Live live while you can or leave while you can?
Can
Or is it
love while
love?
you can, or we don't know what the word is.
We don't know. Is it leave while you can? And I always the cane falling model, and people are always like, why are you doing that? Like, what is this this model? Because I think sometimes when people ask for a monologue, they maybe think it's from a contemporary play or Shakespeare, but musical theater is my blood. Musical theater is my thing, and so I'm gonna do a monologue from the Drowsy Chaperone because so that it's really even on a more serious note, I have this emotional connection with the show and with that monologue because it's kind of been there for me when I, as not somebody who has from the beginning been set on an acting path, I don't always have just like a monologue that I can pull out just randomly. So Man in Chair has been there for me, as I'm sure he's been there for you.
What are you looking forward to most about doing the show?
Well, I think one of the things I'm looking forward to so much is that while I loved doing Masterclass, and it was so great to do that small scale intimate thing, there were like 4 of us in the cast. Oh, no, I guess 5, right? Three students.
3 students.
Palas.
You and the stagehand. So 6.
And the stagehand. Yeah. That was so wonderful, but also I think when I heard about this, I was like, oh, good, like a group, like I'm just so excited to be like, this is now like, feels so much like when you're doing an ensemble piece of theater and you're just with all these people, and I feel like I'm gonna meet so many people and also see people who I knew from before, and that's, I think, the one thing. So obviously I'm thrilled just to be doing the show because I'm such a fan of the music of it and the hilarity of the show. But in terms of why it was like an instant yes for me to come back to Brief Cameo Productions was I now will be able to have had the experience of a small scale intimate play, and then like completely the other side, which is like a lavish, opulent score and jazzy and like a lot of people doing different roles, and I think it'll just be so much fun.